Great. I am Cici Liang, and I had experience working at the Boston Consulting Group. And while I was there, my focus was on financial institutions, and I was helping banks with regulations, passing the capital exams, and working with the Fed. And I was in a specialized track and had a lot of adventures and very just expansive experiences. And since BCG, I've done marketing for tech startups, and more recently, I've also been training as a coach. So I'm really glad to be here and chat with you all.
Great. Thanks, Cici. Abhishek.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Abhishek Agrawal. I stay in New Delhi, India, with my wife and our 2-year-old son. Professionally, I've been a consultant all my professional life, so 14 years now. First 9.5 years were with McKinsey & Company from 2009 to 2019. Then last 4.5 years, as running my own consulting practice. I mostly, while at McKinsey, I worked mostly for India clients in industrial sector on strategy, business transformation, and for last 4.5 years, I worked equally between India and Middle East, advising clients on growth, strategy, business transformation, and related topics. So very excited to be here, keen to understand what you have top of your mind, happy to share my experiences. One more thing which I do in parallel to consulting is coaching. I think Cici also mentions that. So I try and teach few courses at some of the B schools in India. So that's also a way for me to keep connected to younger generation and share my experiences and learnings.
Lovely. Welcome, Abhishek. Mudit.
Thanks, Anya.
Hi, folks. This is Mudit. I'm from a town in India called Calcutta. I have worked with McKinsey for 3 years. My experience has been more since I was a generalist. I've worked across different industries and sectors. However, the bulk of the projects would have been in, I would say, basic materials or the industrials practiced, as Abhishek also mentioned. Post consulting, I've tried my hand at a couple of startups in India, at different stages of the startups. So really exciting experience there as well, both in the media and entertainment industry. Having experienced that, now I've moved back to independent consulting over the past year or so, and that's something which I personally enjoy a lot. So yeah, that's my journey. Very happy to be here. Excited to be learning from more experienced folks like Abhishek, Cici, Lorenzo, and yeah, looking forward to a good time here.
Thank you, Mudit. Lorenzo, please.
But Lorenzo Vitabile here, ex-Boston Consulting Group, is spending time.
So you're off audio again, Lorenzo. I don't know if you're on mute or lost audio device.
No.
No, it's fine. Now you're back.
That's really weird. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
no, it's fine.
All good,
Yeah.
Lorenzo.
So I was saying Boston Consulting Group, Europe and Middle East. In Middle East, I focused on mainly building companies on behalf of clients. And then I moved in ADQ, which is a sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi. And I kept doing so on behalf of the fund. Recently, the most recent one was a digital bank for those living in the UAE called VO Bank. And the Bitcoin mining company called Zero2, which is mining Alpha Giga in Abu Dhabi now. I'm now setting up in stealth mode a venture operating firm with, on top of that, a fund that will invest in the companies that we co-build with the founders. Very excited to be here, and I really apologize everyone for these technical issues. Hope we are going to have hearable and meaningful conversations going forward.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to directly plunge into it. So you all have been in the consulting industry for quite some time now. And, these days we very commonly hear that digital technologies have transformed how consulting firms work and clients seek advice. So What are your thoughts on it, Abhishek?
Yeah, I think I mean it's not a new trend, right? If you think about it, consulting as a profession is older than computers themselves, right? So consultants have been around for much longer, right? It's by the way before I started, so I'm not that old, but I've heard stories, how people used to do consulting before computers. So, point is, I think I see technology as an enabler, right? So we incorporated, of course, computers, PowerPoint presentations, Excel modeling, and so on and so forth, and came, advanced analytics, and now we are talking about generative AI technologies. So I see all these technologies and whatever will come in future, right, as sort of toolkit which is available, right, for consultants to go out and serve their clients. I think the important part is, see, we are not sort of consulting for machines by machines, right? We are consulting for people, right? And it is very much by people, right? At the I mean, at the most sort of essence of it, of consulting profession is basically helping organizations perform better, right? And how do you do that? You do that through people of organization, right? Organization doesn't exist separately as an entity. So it involves a lot of working with people, right? You have to think about how will you convince someone to do something differently compared to what he or she may have been doing for last 20 years of his or her life. You need to think about how change will stick. You need to think about, how client will sort of implement what you are suggesting to, right? Which could be difficult at times. So there's a very strong, I would say, people element to it, right? And that's where I think a lot of emotional intelligence and the way you work with clients, the way you work with your teams is fairly critical, right? And then, of course, there is the intellectual part around problem structuring, right? Coming to right solution for client and so on and so forth. So I see technology as an enabler, right? But not the end by itself, right?
Right.
I mean, just take just one quick example. Think of doctors, right? I mean, you go to a doctor, because you can trust that doctor, or that doctor will give you time, will be responsive to your requirements, and so on and so forth. Right now, he or she may give you a prescription by hand, right? Or can use a computer, or can use an AI model. That doesn't matter, right? Those are not the reasons why you would select or not select a doctor. And I guess it's same for consultants.
Understood. Lorenzo, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's a very interesting perspective, and in general, I would agree that in the management consulting business, there will always be this people element, right? Which is the also unique selling point of management consulting, that you're adding a quite relevant and unique human capital to each and every project, right? That any client is buying for. What I really think is going to change is kind of the concept of the way technology is being perceived in everyone's lives. So, for example, the same in a similar way on how internet disrupted our daily lives and the way we work. This is going to happen more and more, but just at a faster pace, right? And this will offer opportunity in both directions. One direction is, of course, there will be more gap to close for existing, let's say, clients, and these clients will look at management consulting. They will look at ways to close the gap, but at the same time, the skill set required to close this gap will come more and more for, let's say, younger generations and people that comes unbiased to the new technologies. So this will also require multiple injections of new skill set and new type of talent into the management consulting business. So it's gonna really be about who's gonna be faster and smarter at adapting. There's many ways to adapt, but I think that again, client relationships and in general, it's also important to understand that what is called this business is management consulting. It's not just consulting, right? So we always target the management teams, and these management teams are also kind of have some inertia, and they also needs to get help, right, into getting on board with new technologies, with new digital aspects of life. So I think there will always be a role um, for smart advisors to the management teams in each and every company. Of course, there is a risk in the future that most of the value creation will not come from improvement in innovation, but from disruption. And if that's the case, that's going to be an issue for everyone. But it is not because management consulting companies are not serving in a proper way the customers. Is that the customers are changing because newer companies will be built in hyperscale, and management consulting will need to serve new customers with different needs, right? So I think that's going to be the challenge for everyone here.
Right. No, like you rightly said, I mean, technology does bring a higher operational capacity and it's only to improve in the future. But at the same time, I think the human mind is so versatile in understanding the client sentiments that there'll always be a need of human element also. So this brings me to the next question. Do you think the demands of the clients have also changed? Like if I have to compare a generalist role as opposed to an expert in a particular sector, do you think it is more in demand or what is a favorable route to take? Mudit, can you help?
Sure. I believe two parts to it, right? Like from a client perspective, if you look at it, right, the client would prefer a sector expertise, right? Like if you have to have a client, you have to have a consultant working with you, who's let's say equally skilled. You definitely prefer someone who has a sector expertise because it just makes it easier to adapt to the solutions and make the solutions more implementable and more real, is what I would put. However, from a consultant perspective, I would like to add that, right, it's being a generalist offers you a little more flexibility, right, in terms of the kind of projects that you're doing, and also for the kind of learning that you have, right, like having to ramp up on a new sector, a new industry very fast. It just always keeps you on your toes, and of course, like I mean, you're thrown into the deep end of the pool, and that's where you learn your best. So it's a slightly differing, point of views when it comes to the clients versus consultants on this particular topic.
You're on mute, Tanya.
You're on mute.
My bad. I'm so sorry. Sissy, I was asking what are your thoughts on it because you've had a very non-traditional route, So what
Yeah.
do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I just want to clarify before I answer. Is it favorable for the client, or do you mean if it's favorable to the consultant?
Favorable for the client. Like
For the
what is
client?
more in? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it depends on the type of project that a client is hiring for. In the line of work that I was doing at the time, you do like in financial regulations or working with the largest banks in the U.S. and Europe, and we needed someone who would understand, the requirements and demands of the Federal Reserve and navigate that conversation, and also have the expertise and the capability of very quantitatively driven methodologies and modeling. And on top of that, it required like understanding of client dynamics and like working across the entire banks, across the sections. So it really does help to have the kind of specific expertise or industry expertise. But having said that, I got there having no experience in that, and I was basically, I just got into it. It landed in my lap, and I could, as someone who has the capability of being a generalist, I just learned on the job, and I learned really fast and really well. So I think the consultant having the capability of going in different directions can actually feel the need for specialized tracks, and but at the same time, for that kind of particular projects is it's kind of like almost like when you get sick, you need a surgeon. And for that type of work, it's really helpful to have the industry expertise. But for general management consulting, I think there's still a lot of value to be a generalist. I think Tanya is frozen.
I think Tanya has frozen.
Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, Abhishek, do you have a similar thought process, or do you think generalist roles are still that important, and consultants should continue taking the same route?
No, I'm a big fan of a big proponent of what we call first principles based problem solving, right? Uh, that's what I've done last 14 years of my life. So pardon me for being a bit biased towards that approach. By the way, they're both schools of thought, right? Not to say any one line of thinking is correct, but I personally think that there's a lot of value in having strong generalist skill sets or a strong consulting toolkit. If anything, interestingly, I think value of this has only increased in recent times, right? Even though we have a lot of technology advancements, as was the discussion previously. Because I also think there is while there is a lot more data, right, but also there is a lot more sort of noise, right, which is coming from this data, right. There are a lot more opinions, personal judgments, and so on and so forth, right. So I think in this scenario, the classic consulting toolkit, right. How do I define the problem, right? How do I identify whether it's a sort of top line problem or a profitability problem, right? How do you structure that case? How do you use, let's say an issue tree approach to break down into different components? How do you get right data? How do you think about communication, right? Are you good at communicating in a top-down method? Have you thought about sustainability of your solution, right? All those classic, consulting, skills. I think they are even more important, right, in today's times. I'm not by any means undermining need for sector expertise, from to solve a client problem, but you can always get that in your team, right? In a recent program that we did, we got an industry expert, right, who was spending a day a week with us. But I think talking more from perspective of, most of you who are in consulting setup and working on your skills, I would highly encourage you to, keep working on this toolkit, because this is something that will stay with you, right? Irrespective of what you do afterwards. This is something you can always fall back on, right? Always rely on. So this is, this is going to, come to your rescue, right? And as a personal example, so first time I worked with Haninder 2 or 3 years back, immediately after COVID. It was a completely new setup, new geography. I not worked in Middle East up until then. A new client, a very new sector. This was social sector, early childhood, and a very new problem, right? It was around organization transformation. I had not worked that much in that domain, right? Still, I could do that because I was fairly confident about my consulting toolkit. I could apply that. I could work with client, and eventually we got to a fairly good outcome for clients. So again, my suggestion to group will be to keep working on that toolkit and get more and more comfortable with it. This is what is going to stay with you, irrespective of sector or work that you'll do later on.
Understood. So I think we all agree here that there's no particular pathway for a consultant. I mean, it's subjective on projects and to each its own journey. So this brings me to my next question, Lorenzo. I wanted to ask you, do you think, you've been an MBB consultant yourself. Do you think MBB consultants have an added advantage as compared to a freelance independent consultant or a consultant coming from a different firm?
Yeah, so for anyone looking for the skill set that comes from management consultants, I really think there is a strong advantage of having MBB's DNAs, right? Especially if the choice is between an MBB and a non-MBB management consultant who needs to bring to the table what has been described as these generalist capabilities, which is built on top of a framework of a toolkit of consulting tools. So this is for sure the case in my opinion, especially in this region. But I would say across the board, unless there is any trade-offs between value for money, right? Because of course MBBs are also, even ex MBBs are more expensive. On the other side, I think there's also an opportunity for individuals to build personal brands, which goes way beyond MBBs. So we live in a world where it matters more to be Tanya rather than Tanya associated with any brand. So if you can build a personal brand which is characterized by consistently promoting yourself and showing track records against what you are promoting as your core skill set. Even as an independent consultant, you are transcending. You are really going beyond what an institutional background and pedigree can provide you. And this is even more so the case if you kind of tend to stick around the same clients, right? Which you can build trust, mutual trust on. I think you need a brand to signal externally, right? It's like the same reason why you get a degree. Because even if a degree from Harvard is a good thing, because even if I don't know you, I trust the organization Harvard goes with MBBs. But if I start to know you, because I kind of see what's your interest, what's your writings, what are your thoughts, I can hear panels, right, where you talk about what you think. You are active, right, on your promoting your brand, and that's more powerful, right? Because I don't have to bet on the average that comes out from McKinsey, BCG, or Bain, but I can actually pick up whatever you can bring to the table because you are showing off what it is. I think there's an opportunity there for independent consultants, which is much better than just trying their luck or just being part of MBBs, trying their luck in joining one of the MBBs or showing off being that having been part of one of these. So that's for sure an opportunity and the trend which is coming.
Definitely. Mudit, do you agree with this? Do you have a different thought process to this?
No, I think I completely agree, right? It's especially more so in independent consulting, right? Where you have very quick turnaround times for, getting staffed on the project, having very short cycle problem solving, delivering short projects, let's say 2, 3 month projects, wherein the clients don't have, the entire screening opportunities which are available typically in, let's say, while hiring for a full-time position, right? So in that case, one of the few things that typically help is that signaling mechanism that, okay, if you've spent considerable time at the MBB, you've built the basic consulting toolkit, and hence it might be, faster for you to start delivering on the project. I think it's that's what I believe. However, also completely resonate with what Lorenzo said was that, right? Like, it's also important to build your personal brand, because at the end of the day, just the brand names you're associated with can only take you so far, right? So once you start building brands, it's all it's and it's a small world, right? Like, and word spreads very fast, right? Good feedback also flows, so your personal brand flows. There are references, connections, etc., that always help going forward. And I think just addressing one of the questions that I think Shubham and Haninder also have on the chat, right? Is something that I have been also personally noticing, right? Like, as when you're an independent consultant, uh, having those opportunities to upskill and get mentorship from, right, are very limited versus when you are working as a full-time consultant, because there's an entire structure, organization structure, that is set up to, provide mentorship, provide guidance at each step of the way. In independent consulting, of course, you have to deliver, but you don't have the support system to deliver it as strong as you have at an MBB. So, I mean, this is one question that I would also want some answer from slightly more experienced people here on the panel. not sure if Abhishek or CC, would you want to add to that, or Lorenzo?
Stacey, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So I do think, I mean, there's definitely advantage of having been to the MBB and being trained and worked on those projects with a high stake profile clients. And we're talking to the community of ex-MBB consultants. So I would say definitely leverage that. And at the same time, I feel the market is changing and consulting is being more democratized over time. And it's only going to be more so in the future. And, it's kind of like we were on a train track, but it's going to become more and more free roaming, and competition, I feel competition will come more and more from other places where people are building their personal brands, where people are doing things with like smaller companies and tapping into the higher demands of like understanding the customer, understanding the human interactions, and it's becoming, I feel like it's becoming more micro. So definitely I feel it's definitely important to stay on top of that wave, and if you can serve that wave, that's definitely going to serve you well. And it's like about upskilling. It's about keeping up with what skills are relevant or becoming more relevant, and what skills are more, I guess, more in touch with the humanness of any business. So it's not like having a name is very helpful and it's going to serve you for a while, but at the same time, kind of preparing for the changes.
I think just to add a quick thought, this is definitely, I mean, let's be honest about it. This is a challenge, right, for independent consulting model, right? In a firm, you do have very well-defined pathways, right, for coaching, right, for you to sort of define what are the skill set you want to work on, and as you progress through different levels, right, this is how you will go from level A to level B, right? I don't think there's a ready answer right now, right? It will evolve, right? Maybe platforms such as Strategy Connect, Haninder and Shubham may need to think about this aspect, right? Now that they're working on it, how do they upskill consultants which are there? Maybe learning will come, through a community method, right? When consultants will connect and sort of help each other. So I don't know how it will evolve, but I think if anything else, right, in independent consulting, you do get to work on as exciting mandates, right? In fact, there are a lot of other positives, right? You have much more flexibility, much more control over what you do. I think the part which is still to be figured out is exactly this point that Mudit raised. How do you get a more structured sort of coaching, environment which will help you to continue to upskill? So let's recognize this as a challenge and sort of unresolved question, but hopefully, answers will emerge as we go along.
Right. No,
Thanks,
we did
Abhishek.
speak. We did speak about, the consultant journey, or, creating a brand for yourself. But what are your thoughts on, the firms? These days, the firms have broadened their service offerings. They don't work like traditional management consulting. Like McKinsey, BCG, they've gone ahead and done acquisitions and they take care of all the functions all by themselves. What is your thought on that, Mudit?
Yeah, I think it's it's just a natural progression, I would say, right? Like the nature of the projects have been changing. I mean, 15 years, 20 years ago, from what I've heard, of course, from different partner interactions, it was way more strategic than just like pure play strategy building. Now the projects have been like, even I've seen that transition myself, right? I have been a little more focused towards driving implementation, and I speak more from an Indian context. Uh, and in that aspect, right? So the kind of skill sets that you have as an organization also needs to change, right? You need to keep pace with what the client needs are changing, how the client needs are changing. So now if the client, let's say, wants the best in class cost reduction, uh, so what we need to do is, and this is something that McKinsey also has, they've partnered, they've acquired a company to help them do an entire cost tear down, do a cost vendor negotiation strategy. They have entire cost list from vendors, which enables McKinsey to get to the lowest possible cost for the client, which 10 years ago, in the absence of this acquisition, would not have been possible. They would have had to outsource it, get all of those RFEs processes in place to arrive at that. But now all of those timelines are crashed, and I think it's a solution that the client needs, and hence they've done it. There are so many other acquisitions, right? Like Quantum Black. They've also developed a lot of tools on their own. There's something called MindLens that McKinsey has, which enables data analysis for equipment in mining, and so on and so forth. So it's more to do with the nature of the projects that have been changing, I would say. And yeah, that's, and I see it happening in the future as well, as and when the client needs change.
Right. CC, did you have a similar experience? Do you have a similar thought process? I mean, you've spoken about the acquisitions that BCG made. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is just like, the Googles and the Facebooks in the world, right? Consulting is like another industry, but they're in a way that they're similar to Google and those companies, and these companies, they kind of, they're acquiring other companies in order to stay competitive. So over the years, BCG has acquired numerous companies that serve different functionalities, and that's definitely a way for them to stay competitive in the changing consulting market, and so that they can do the management, like the classic management consulting work that are still available with the clients, but at the same time they're looking forward to the next steps, which is more implementation maybe, or the design. They have the design team, and they have the data team, and they have like market research team, and so all of that, it's definitely like, basically it's kind of taking their own medicine. Yeah, so
Okay, perfect. Okay, we are running short of time, so one last question for all of you. What are your thoughts on the future of consulting? Like, you see consulting firms like, say, Strategy Connect performing in the future? So, Abhishek, if you can give your thoughts.
I think, I mean, I can talk about independent consulting, right? Having been at it for last 4 or 5 years. I think when I started, it was, I still got asked, by many of my colleagues, on why am I doing this? But I think if I think about now, I think time is here and now, right? And time is correct, right, for independent consulting to continue to grow from here. And I think it's happening. So let's look at demand side first, right? Firstly, there are wider set of clients. I think one of you asked when we started, what about SMEs who want to get consulting services, right? Look, traditionally consulting was very much focused on serving top 50 clients, or Fortune 500 clients and so on, right? But now there's a wider sector of clients, startup, SMEs, so on, who need consulting services and who may find getting an independent consultant to be a better proposition. So I think that is changing. Second, kind of mandates are changing, right? Lot many clients are asking for more of a partnership, right? So they're not asking us, tell me how to do this. They are saying, can you do this with me, right? So and for that, again, an independent consulting model works much better, right? Because you can work for a longer duration of time and so on, right? So demand is changing. Supply is also, there is much more talent available, of course, right? And there are many of us, who want to continue to do consulting, but maybe, with our own practice. Like my reasons were, I wanted to have my own practice. I wanted to start something when I left my previous firm. But I was also very risk averse, right? So I didn't want to do a tech startup. I thought consulting is something I had done, so why not continue doing it, right? So there is much more availability of people who are doing it. And then finally, I think we have platforms such as Strategy Connect, right, who are helping bridge, who are creating the infrastructure which is needed, right, to collaborate, to reach out to others. I think also just the level of collaboration has increased much more, right? I think it's 10 times more than what used to be 10 years back, right? For one of my engagements, this was around identifying new technology trends, and we could reach out to 10 leading researchers of that technology across the globe, right? And I think just mindset of professional community is more to collaborate, and that is in line with what's happening, socially as well. So I think with all these factors, clients becoming more diverse, asking for partnership, more availability of people who want to do it, and platforms and supporting infrastructure, I think I think it's perfectly fine a time, right, for someone to explore this. And this is a discussion Mudit and I had, right, when a few months back, that maybe 3-4 years back I would have said, okay, fine, try it out for 2-3 months as a filler between your current job and next job. But I think now it's very much feasible, to try and think of this as something you will do for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Lorenzo, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's very, by the way, that's very interesting, Abhishek, your perspective. I think I totally agree on this trend of trying to see more and more consultants as partners, at least the ones that the clients that really wants to work more with consultants, they tend to ask for more of a partnership
Yeah.
approach rather than an agency approach. And I personally believe that two sectors, kind of having, I spent some time on the buy side, right, with ADQ. And I also think that the time is right to augment, if not completely disrupt, the venture capital slash investment sector, in terms of it's been fine for a time, let's say, that venture capital, when venture capital really disrupted the market and found a way to finance innovation, right? And there was this concept of diversifying bets in order to give exposure to limited partners to a proper portfolio of potential disruptive innovations. But I think the time is over, because it's not acceptable anymore to just deploy hope as a strategy as a venture capitalist. You cannot just pick and provide passive capital without adding value. And on the other side, instead, the private equity has been kind of using management consulting since forever. Bain Capital is one of the private equity which provides most alpha to its investors. And what they do is that they basically, for each and every company they acquire, and they acquire only the majority, right? Only majority acquisitions. They have a playbook which is very much similar to what MBB's framework are. It's just that they apply it post acquisition, and they restructure a company, and they do the usual things that also management consulting would do. Sometimes they even hire one of the MBBs to do so, right? But typically they keep it internal. What I'm saying is there is a chance, in my opinion, that in the future, these two sectors, these two worlds, will be required to work more and more together. On one side, because money is not value add anymore to companies, startups, founders, shareholders. And on the other side, management consulting or consultants in general are getting paid a flat fee regardless if they bring impact or not. That's not acceptable anymore as well. So I think we will go on a hybrid that will be more success fee on the consulting side, and potentially also some investments or participating in the funding needs. So using the balance sheet of MBB's companies to basically walk the talk, put some skin in the game with strategic clients. And on the other side, I also think that investing firms will need more and more consulting skill set to provide more value rather than just outside in due diligence, writing the right investment memo and put some money into the founders' pockets, right? Because what founders need is cooperators and people that can provide structure and help them shape fundamentals for their companies, which are a skill set that management consultants all have. So that's I think something what I'm personally betting on is going to happen in the future, that we will have a hybrid between these two worlds. Yeah, that's my I think that's my take on it.
Thank you. Cece, your last thoughts on this?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think 10 years is such a long window for the kind of market we're in right now. It's kind of like it's the hockey stick is going up, right? So it will be really hard to predict like what's gonna come out of the 10-year window. You know, I heard Harvard used to have a department, like a sub-department in sociology, where they predict the future. And then at one point they got rid of it because it's impossible to predict. And I feel, I mean, a lot of things will really depend on, you know, climate change is, you know, we can't really predict what's going to happen in climate change. And a lot of the world socioeconomic and political environment, and that's going to, I feel that all of that is going to play a huge role in how consulting will shape up in the future. I think the MBB consulting firms, they either adapt, or, you know, it's just like it's just like all the species in the world, right? Like animals. And for independent consulting, I feel there will definitely be more and more people doing that, and, you know, people coming out of the woodworks and like finding their own ways that are more aligned with them, that are more accessible to them, and more flexible. For example, you know, like, and people will try to use independent consulting to create more space in their lives to try different things and to try different projects within consulting, and also, you know, explore other options of like different types of work to kind of really make transitions to whatever that they want to do next. So I feel like independent consulting can definitely give that kind of flexibility and that kind of adaptability for individuals, and I think that's very valuable. And I feel more and more people will definitely do that, and companies will be more and more open to that as well. And it's just, I feel like everything will just be more democratized, and I see large changes coming depending on the environment, depending on the socioeconomic changes that are going to happen in the world.
So I think it's safe to say we're looking at a brighter future for the consultants.
Hopefully so. We are all in for that.
Yes,
Okay.
you have the skills with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for this. We'll quickly take up the questions that everybody's asked. because we're running short of time. Okay.
I can quickly respond to Shubham, your question on kind of mandates. I think it very much depends on the broader state of economy, right? So in Western economies, you'll see more market share gain kind of assignment strategy, marketing and sales, because gaining 2% market share would mean a big thing. For emerging economies, consumption-led economies such as India and others, it's not as much about market share gain because everything is growing, right? So it's more about how do we identify, where to play, which areas to enter, and so on, right? For investment-led economies such as Middle East and so on, it's more about, large-scale projects, helping partnering with clients, as Lawrence also mentioned, right, to implement those big projects. So it's very much dependent on overall state of economy.
There's another question. What would your advice be for consultants at full-time consulting firms considering freelancing as a career option? Lorenzo, would you like to take that?
Let me actually look into the question because I couldn't hear you. I don't know.
It's the third question by Shubham.
Yeah. Consultant after that, considering freelancing as a great option. No? First of all, I think it really depends on why they are stepping out from the consulting job, right? So it really depends what is not working there for them, because if they don't like consulting work, they should not get into freelance consulting. That's my first advice. If they don't like not having control of their time and the projects they are working on, and potentially the way they are growing skill set, but they still like the challenges and they still like the overall critical thinking and structuring those processes, they could totally consider freelance consulting. Always also being very much aware that they need to build a brand, and whatever they did in the past is what they present themselves to the market, right? So the more junior, the harder it is to become a successful freelancer. Or at least I would say you need to at least convince the audience and your clients that you have the minimum viable product available in terms of consulting toolkit. So it's not that you can step out after 1 or 2 years. It's very hard, right, to sell yourself as a freelancer as of now. But the closer you've been to, let's say, a consultant, less 4 or 5 years as minimum, or a project manager, the easier it is. Basically, start as a freelancer, I would say. And then, of course, that's completely up to you, because then you become an entrepreneur. You don't become a freelance consultant. You become an entrepreneur, and it's completely up to you to make something out of it.
I think I agree with Lorenzo. Just to add my perspective on that, I think it's a very practical advice, right? So people have talked about creating your own brand. To me, it's more like creating your operating system, right? How do you operate as a consultant, right? So which includes what's your skill set, what are the clients that lean on to you, what's your professional network, right? And what who could be associates that will that will be excited to work with you. So I think creating this entire ecosystem or operating system takes time, right? Plus also just getting that basic consulting toolkit. So I also think maybe around 4 or 5 years. That's a sweet spot. Yeah, but I think 1 year, 2 year is probably too short.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question, Aman asks, would like to hear thoughts on how consulting is becoming more accessible for startups and SMEs. Any one of you would like to take that? Abhishek?
I think
Or Mudit? Anybody?
I was
Please
just
go
saying
ahead.
that, and I was saying that I think Abhishek and Lorenzo touched upon it briefly in the discussion, right? And I think uh, one of the things that I've seen a couple of Indian startups also do is take on people from these consulting companies, right, to join in their chief of staff kind of a role, while a lot of it is in a permanent position. But I do feel that some of it could also be made into a contract consulting kind of a role as well, because it's a very it's almost like, and I can speak from my experience at the startups, right? I was working as a chief of staff, and I was doing exactly what I was doing as a consultant. The only thing was my clients were the different departments in the startup. So I was doing the exact same job, of course, a little deeper into implementation. That's something that I would probably see more of going forward. Probably that's probably something which can be explored.
Aman, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Or you
thank
can
you so much. No, no, I was hearing the conversation all around. It was touched during the discussion as well. I'm happy to hear the thoughts.
Great. Okay, we have another question. What are the best ways for independent consultants to upskill themselves? Cece, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, I would say just keep learning, keep following your curiosity. What are you curious about? What turns you on? What are you excited about? And go learn that. There are a lot of, you know, even YouTube, you can find things on YouTube and find the right people to learn from and and keep expanding your toolkits and also, you know, follow the people in the industries and in the practice areas that you want to expand into, and find ways to talk to them or just follow them. And I think it's always just follow your curiosity, and you know, learning is constant. And so in conversations that you have with other consulting independent consultants, or any events that you're going to, any just anything. And I feel like I personally, I continue to learn things that really excite me. So, you know, I I got into marketing. I got into, like, I learned about branding, copywriting. Like I want the whole thing. And so, you know, I learned all of that, and which is very different from the consulting toolkit that I had. And yeah, just, you know, the world is open, and anything is possible. So just keep learning. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take the last question. This is directed to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, having been on the client side at ADQ, continuing further, what did you look for when hiring independent consultants?
Yeah, so a little bit of context. I was looking for really project managers to multiply my own time. So I was like building 5 to 6 companies in parallel. I kind of needed self-starters with some sector expertise to complement what I was missing as a generalist, but that could pick up the structuring and framework approach that I had developed, right, to run projects in parallel. So someone that could basically represent myself in a different situation, and that would not need too much guidance in terms of making things happen. But in general, I think the most important dimension that you need to portray as an independent consultant is part of your title. You need to be independent, right? There's no way around it. If you're not independent in your work, it doesn't work. So you need to be self-started, self-driven, willing, you know, working outcome oriented, but for real. Because if you don't wake up in the morning, no one is gonna wake you up. You don't receive a call, right? You just don't receive the money at the end of the month, or the company that hired you is not hiring you anymore, right? So that's what really matters, right? And that what changes everything. But no, it's in a good way, right? because it forces you to be accountable with yourself for real. So I think that's kind of my my bottom line. If you're considering being independent consultants, focus on what are you doing to make yourself really independent in what you're doing, and improve on that to start with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this panel discussion. Our time is over, so I will not take much of your time. Thank you very much.